welcome back to Red Devils Talk, brought to you by the Elite Football Show. I'm here for another fantastic show, this time on a Tuesday because we play tomorrow on the Wednesday, and there will be the masterclass. And also, it'll be an opportunity for us to just talk about things that aren't match related, you know, some of the biggest, I guess, topics on Twitter. So I've got my usual crew here. I've got Joe, Ciaran, and Mark. Boys, how are you? I'll start with you, Joe. 0-0 on the weekend. I mean, look, United versus Liverpool, the build-up is so intense. And then it comes to the actual game, it's usually very drab. It has been like that for the last couple of years. You know what? You would have taken a draw, wouldn't you, probably before the game, and even after the game, you just think, right, got the point at Anfield, and you move on.
Yeah, they actually snatched your hand off for a point before the game. Obviously, I think it's a sign of the times and a sign of the game, the way the game went, that actually by the time we had the final whistle, I was left feeling a bit disappointed, thinking there was probably a little bit more there for us. But like I think Gary Neville said in the studio after the game, hindsight's a wonderful thing, you know what I mean? And it's one thing to feel like that after the game. But no, I think a point's good. I think it's arguably going to be our toughest game this season. You could argue that Man City are probably playing a lot better than Liverpool at the moment. But if you think about the struggles that we traditionally have at Anfield and actually how we've done at the Etihad in the last couple of years in terms of performance, you would predict that Liverpool would always traditionally be our hardest game. So it's out of the way now. We've got a point. We've got an opportunity to play them again at Old Trafford next week, where we'll probably talk about this a bit later on, but hopefully Ollie will try something different and he might stumble across something that really works against Liverpool, ready for that all-important home game in the league later on in the season.
Yeah, spot on. Guys, let us know in the comments. We've got Haider here, Jamie. We've got Mark in the comments for some reason. He should be over here. He's got a doppelganger. But look, Ciaran, one of the most frustrating thing is that, look, we need to talk about progress. Manchester United have definitely progressed. Last season, when we went into this game, we were almost 30 points behind. And do you remember how horrible it was when you were hearing the whole of Anfield singing, we're going to win the league? And it was that at that point, I knew Armageddon's happening. It's happening. Fast forward almost 12 months, Manchester United win that game, 3 points ahead. They're still 3 points ahead, still top of the table. What is the fuss about? Look, I will say this, that United probably had their best opportunity ever. Well, I say ever. I'm saying the last 7 years, because it's not really ever. It feels like forever we haven't won the title. Last 7 years to actually put a number on Liverpool. And I think Joe's right. You come out with the game and you're thinking, yeah, United could have probably won that. But all things considered, a bit of context, it's been like 2 or 3 days now. It's really not the end of the world, is it? And that's what I tweeted at the time, and that's how I feel right now. United have progressed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people still expect United to win every single game. Back to what we used to do under Fergie, and it's just not that realistic anymore, because those United teams, you had one big rival, whether it was Chelsea, Arsenal, City, in a season. Now you have probably 3 or 4. The Liverpool game is huge because there's so much emotion attached to it, because you have United fans and Liverpool fans basically attacking each other all year. Last season was a real down point because we had to witness Liverpool winning the league for the first time in 30 odd years. And I think, like you said, Haider, it was one of those, everybody knew it was happening probably from December or January, because everybody else was so bad last year. So it's one of those that I think people need to calm down a little bit. And you see it on both sides, that some people, when United win a game, they're going saying, oh, this is our best chance to win the league. To be honest, it's just the fact that United have been kind of so consistent compared to other teams. But if we're going to go crazy because we draw 0-0 to Liverpool, who, if we're being honest with ourselves, are probably the favourites to win the league, I think you're just stretching as a fan, because you only have to look at the Sky Sports commentary after the game. They asked Michael Richards, Roy Keane and Jamie Carragher who they think is going to win the league. Not one person said Manchester United. So, like, if you have someone like Roy Keane, if United were dominant, he would have said that he thinks United would win the league. But I think we just need to relax a little bit, because a 0-0 draw, I think if we said it before we came top of the league, that if we drew 0-0 at Anfield and we had the better chances to win the game, I think we all would have taken that a couple of weeks ago. I think we just need to calm down a little bit. I think the fact that we have been first for about a week now, that people are getting a little bit too ambitious. We need to take it one game at a time. You look at the game, you analyse the game. It was actually, I think United played pretty well without really dominating any big portion of the game.
Yeah, very fair enough. We've got a comment here from Zakir asking about Paulie. Paulie is doing some of his own stuff at the moment, as Joe's been helping with him on United Happy Hour. He's doing a lot of his own writing, so if things work out, he might come back. But at the moment, he's doing his own thing. So we're all still friends with Paulie.
Paulie's all good, by the way. Yeah, he's fine. He's just cracking on. He's doing well.
Yeah, he's doing great. We'll see. Still in our group chat. We always talk all the time. So yeah, there's nothing to worry about, guys. And Jamie's got a comment here. Spot on about Neville last night. Yeah, Gary was absolutely spot on, Mark, last night. You obviously seen the rounds. You saw when Gary said, essentially, United still are 2 or 3 players away from winning the title. I don't think anyone actually expects them. If you had City, Liverpool, and United all lined up, I don't think anyone in their heart of hearts, no matter how big of a United fan you are, would actually predict United to win the league. No one would say United are the favourites. We're in the title race, and that's great at the moment. But no one thinks that United are the favourites. And then you have Carragher come in. That's just absolutely nonsense. And this is typical media rubbish. They're spinning everything. He thinks that Manchester United should have gone there and played their game. What about Liverpool, a side that hasn't scored in a Premier League game for 3 games in a row? What about Mo Salah hasn't scored and assisted in 4 games in a row? They're the champions. They're the better side. They're the ones who are the finished article with the best manager in the world. The fact that they didn't go and put this United side away, to me, actually says more about Liverpool than it does about Manchester United.
Yeah, totally agree. People like to find the negatives and criticise United. We've seen that. We always see that, Twitter, wherever. I think if you look back at last year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years ago, we've made a huge amount of progress. We would have lost this game 2 or 3-0. And I can understand why people are really disappointed about winning. I was too. I'm sure you guys were too. And that's only because we set up in a particular way, but at the same time, we had 2 golden, maybe 3 golden opportunities in order to win the game. Bruno twice and Pogba, and I think that's why people lament the fact that we haven't won. So I can understand the disappointment, but ultimately we've made a huge amount of progress, and the fact that we came out 0-0, the way that we set up, I think is only good things. And as you say, before the season started, we weren't expected to be anywhere near it. And since that point, we're now in a prime position. So we're always looking at the negatives that might happen during that time, but we didn't expect that, and we have to take one game at a time, and hopefully we'll still be there in March, as we said a couple of weeks ago. It is unfortunate, but the way that I see it is, we didn't have to go there and win that game. Liverpool had to win that game. We were in the driving seat, and they weren't able to do that. They weren't able to break us down. We defended valiantly, and we had the prime opportunities, and that says it all to me. And that's what we need to look at, as opposed to what we didn't do.
Yeah, very, very, very good comments there. We've got Joseph, enjoy the ride, lads. Absolutely. With sitting at the top, I think City are coming up stealth mode. I mean, they're really, really, they have conceded 1 in 9. Something ridiculous like that. I mean, look, if you can defend, then as soon as they add goals to it, they'll cruise this league. I mean, that's the thing with United. United need to actually sort out the defense, and they're doing it in small doses at the moment. We got a message here from Jamie, or a comment about Van Gaal at Liverpool. Yeah, absolutely. I can't think of any other game where we've dominated like we did there, and that was absolutely amazing. Ciaran, I feel like you want to say something. You've turned your mic off mute. Far away, mate.
Yeah, it was just to your point about the defending, that you look at some of Chelsea's really good teams under Mourinho, and it started with their defence. And if you nick a goal and you win most games 1-0, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you win, whether you win 4 or 5-0 or 1-0. You just need to accumulate points at this stage of the season, because it's so close. Like, you look at the top four and it's all within 3 points. So the more points you can accumulate over the next couple of weeks, you then can actually take the pressure off yourself a little bit when one or two of those teams drop off. And what United have to make sure is that they're not the team that drops off, because this is usually around the time of the season that'll happen. Because look, the European competitions will start up again pretty soon. So I think it's a big one there. And to the point that the commenter just made there, I think it was that one, or even the Martial's first game for United. Those were the only two. And somebody mentioned it on Twitter. Those are the only two that I could think of that where you actually looked at United and they dominated the game against Liverpool.
I mean, United were fantastic in the big games under LVG. He really had a handle on it. The problem was that every other game, it was like watching paint dry. Joe, I'm going to come to you in a second, but I've got a comment here from Heli saying, we did not quit. We sit back and go for a draw. We played until the final whistle. And that was a key. Look, Liverpool dominated possession. Liverpool dominated the shots. They had more shots, quite a few more shots than us. But you think about those shots, Joe, how many of them were real clear-cut opportunities? How many of them were De Gea making absolute worldly of save? They weren't. You think of United's one, Paul Pogba's one, and Bruno Fernandes's one. You know, that's probably why we come out feeling a little bit disappointed. But I do want to go on to Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford, because I think what frustrates me the most about this fan base is that there's always negativity surrounding a bad performance. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Bruno Fernandes has 11 goals. Marcus Rashford has 7. They both have around 7 and 5 assists. So they've accounted for at least 75% of Manchester United's goals this season in the Premier League. United's standout performance. Now, I'm not saying you're exempt from criticism. That's not what I'm saying. And guys, I want to hear your views in the comments regarding Bruno Fernandes and Rashford and some of the absolute nonsense you're seeing on Twitter in terms of it's not criticism, it's abuse. You have to critique, Joe. It's very important. You critique in every respect. In every aspect of your life, you need to have an open mind to critique. And Bruno had an absolute shocker. His pass percentage was about 50%. I think he was probably our worst player on the pitch. And Marcus has looked off for a while. I will be honest with you. He hasn't looked himself. He did have a shoulder injury, and that was causing problems. I think Ollie gambled on the front three. It was different. I knew what he was trying to do. As I said in the masterclass, he put Pogba on the right to play his diagonal balls. I understood the reasoning, but it didn't quite work. Marcus isn't a number 9. We can see time and time again, he's always offside. And I think what you've got to take into account as well is that he is playing in multiple positions. He's playing on the left, he's played striker, he's played on the right. You know, he is having to adjust his game. So I do think that does probably, you know, contribute why he's having so many offsides. But United, I've got a little stat here. 16% of their offsides this season came in that first half. 16%. I think Marcus in the end had about 5 or 6 out of the 8 or 9. It's really difficult. But tell me your thoughts about Bruno. And, you know, if there's one player that's got credit in the bank, if there's one player that's allowed to have a bad day or a bad game, it's Bruno Fernandes.
Hey, the whole reason you're going to Liverpool 3 points clear on Sunday, expecting to win that game, is because you've got a player like Bruno Fernandes in your team, and because he's done the things that he's done since he's come to this club. And you can add Marcus Rashford into that conversation as well. He scored. We've said it ourselves. We've criticised his performances this season, but he scored some important goals for us. You know what I mean? And he's made some brilliant runs, and he connects really well with Bruno. So, look, sometimes when our fan base carry off like this, I just think they don't deserve these great players. You don't deserve it. If you can't appreciate them, why should we even have them? It makes me sick to my stomach that it's saying with Pogba. You know, even though he's been playing well now, people still want to beat him. You know, I've been one of Pogba's biggest critics, and I'll be happy to come on here and say he's proved me wrong. That's fine. Now he's playing well. I'm not still trying to find a way of criticising him. I'm not still looking for excuses to criticise performance. It's ridiculous. And this fan base make me annoyed, you know, when they do start criticising Bruno and Rashford. I do think we've reached a point now where we probably do need to look at how we manage them and rotate them a little bit, because I think it was Wolves at home where I started to see Bruno started to look a bit tired. You know, he had that look on his face that he had towards the end of last season after Project Restart. And I was starting to think then he needs a rest. But it's easier said than done, because you don't want to go into these big games without the likes of Bruno and Rashford. So it's really tricky. We have a little period now where we've got 19th and 20th in the Premier League, and we've got an FA Cup game sandwiched in between, where Ollie can look at rotating maybe, and he needs to be clever about that. But look, the only reason that United think they can win the league this season or even have a chance, Haider, is because we have Bruno Fernandes and we have Marcus Rashford, two players who are pivotal to whether we're going to get anywhere close to this title or even finish in the top four still, because that's still not a given if you go on a bad run. So I think, don't criticise these players. Let's get behind them. And like someone said in the comments earlier, enjoy the ride. There's going to be bumps up and down. That's what it's going to be, and there's going to be players dipping in out of form. But look, even though Bruno played so poorly the other day, you still felt all the time that if he had one opportunity, one chance, he might just get it. I know he did get an opportunity in the game that he wasn't able to take, but he's that type of player. He doesn't need to have a great game. He just needs to have one chance, one opportunity to make an assist, and he can win your games. So that's why he plays.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the comment here from Zaka just sums up how I feel. Are we seriously having this Bruno debate? This fan base is out of this world. And that's the thing, but we've got to talk about these things. The ones that are more balanced and more sane like ourselves, I like to think we are anyway. If we're not, let us know in the comments. But, we do try to look at things without the hysteria, without the clickbait nature of the way that our fan base is. And I won't say names. But, Ciaran, you're looking at it, and Jamie's got a good comment here saying that, Bruno and probably Rashford as well, they're entitled to an odd quiet game. Since he's arrived, he's been a class act for us, but don't want us to rely on him. Now, that's such a big point, to rely on him. Manchester United over-rely on Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford, and we saw that the other day. When the rest of the players weren't pulling their weight, when Pogba wasn't in the team, and obviously issues with Pogba, Bruno and Rashford are pulling us through games. Martial has scored, 2 Premier League goals? Cavani's obviously 33, so he's not going to be relied on regularly, but he is an option. Mason hasn't got running yet, and he's got other issues that have happened this season off the field. So Rashford and Bruno, I mean, two of our players are really performing, really playing out their skin, and we are where we are, and there's still fans criticizing. But that begs to differ. Are we over reliant on them? Because he looks frustrated. He looks like he's a sole creator, Ciaran. But when it doesn't work for him, the team looks a little bit flat.
Yeah. The only thing that I kind of push back on there is that every good team relies on 2 or 3 players. You look at Spurs, they over-rely on Son and Kane. You look at City, it was Aguero and De Bruyne, but it's mainly just been De Bruyne this season. Look, you can even go back to some of the great United teams where we relied on Ronaldo and Rooney. And look, this Bruno kind of mess that we see on Twitter and social media now, I think it reminds me of Ronaldo. How many years did we go through with people saying Ronaldo doesn't play well in big games? Ronaldo doesn't score important goals. Well, he was, but people wanted to criticize him because if you're not scoring 2 or 3 goals a game or scoring a goal a game, getting an assist every single game, you're not good. How many times have we seen it for when we talk about Tottenham for so long, where Harry Kane wasn't scoring important goals? We have Raheem Sterling has never scored against Manchester United. We have all these different examples. And there's a reason for it, because they're playing against good teams. And good teams, they will be double teaming players. So when we used to play, I think I mentioned it last week, the last kind of 3 or 4 years playing against Man City, if you look at what they do, they doubled Paul Pogba in every single game. That's the way good teams work. The difference for United under Ferguson is that we had 5 or 6 players that were capable of changing a game. Most teams in the league now don't actually have that. You look at Liverpool, it's their front 3 really, or their front 2 with Mane and Salah. You have Thiago's come in, he's played quite well. But again, it's to start off, there's not that many teams like, I would say, Bayern Munich, who have so many creators and so many players that can score. I think Bayern Munich right now are the closest thing to what United had under Ferguson.
Ciaran, I would argue, just to add to that, that's a great point, actually. I didn't think of it like that. But I would say back when Ferguson was here and, sort of the late 2000s, I would say, mid to late 2000s, I would say, remember when United, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool all were dominating the Champions League? Yeah. Quality and standards higher then, but there's more teams at a similar level now.
Yeah, I think that's the way it's gone, because I think I mentioned this to you last week. I actually think the standard of players has actually decreased in the last 10 years. That when we saw all those teams in England, you had still two amazing teams in Barcelona and Real Madrid. You had AC Milan, who were excellent. You had um, who else was there? Was a lot of other good teams because PSG were only kind of in their infancy at that stage. But now you look at the top teams and you pick out one or two big players, and you're like, those players can win someone a title. You just look at it last year for Liverpool. Now, the difference was they have people in the spine of their team that are very, very good. So you had Van Dijk, you had Alisson, and then you had your goal scorers in Mane and Salah. That's what United used to have. You look at those teams where you would have Van der Sar in goal, you had Rio and Vidic in defence, you had Scholes, you had Carrick, but then you had Rooney, Berbatov, Tevez.
1 to 11 was just quality, wasn't it? And even the depth players were quality.
Yeah, that's the difference. So, like, I think when we say we're over relying on Bruno and Rashford, I don't think that's particularly a bad thing when you consider a couple of years ago we were relying on Pogba and we were all saying we're actually not getting enough from him, even in just regular games, not even the big games. The fact that you have two players that are actually scoring, assisting, creating chances, it's for me, I think it's a good thing. I know a lot of people want to turn it out to be bad, but this whole idea that these great players aren't performing in big games, it just isn't true when you look at the game. Because even though Bruno didn't have a great game, he's able to create more chances for other players, even if he doesn't touch the ball. Why is it that Paul Pogba could get that much space in the box? The reason is because there's two players focusing on Bruno Fernandes. Now, if Pogba hits that a bit right or a bit left, United score, nobody's talking about it. But the fact is, the big teams who have a good defense and a good system will always try and eliminate your best player. Right now, that's Bruno Fernandes. And until other players start stepping up to that level, it will continue in that way. It's the reason why we haven't fared well against Wolves, because they do the exact same thing. They try and eliminate your two top players and make somebody else beat you. So until the overall team, like we saw under Fergie, kind of get to the level of Bruno, it will continue. Look, there'll be games that he'll win because he'll take a shot from outside the box or get a little bit of space, like he did on that one chance. If that goes in, all this is gone, and people will say Bruno had a fantastic game, even though it was average enough. But to be honest, for me, everybody on the pitch was average. I don't think anybody you look at and said they were amazing in that game. There was some good performances, but I don't think any one player changed the game for either team, and that's why it was 0-0. And you see that more often now in the big games.
I think this is a massive problem with the media, really. I think that they seem to change the narrative. Technically, Bruno has scored or assisted 6 goals against the top 6 at the moment. Now, whilst that isn't the big 6, if it was the other way around and he had scored more against the big 6, their narrative would have been the top 6. And I think that sometimes they do tend to, bring out some sort of stats in order to back up what they're trying to say. And you're absolutely right. You said as well that in the big games against the bigger teams, they have the players so they can afford to have 2 players on your best player, and everyone else will be good enough in order to do maybe 2 roles. Whereas when you're playing the lesser teams, they can't afford to have 2 players on your best player because they lose a lot of dynamic in the midfield perhaps, and I think I think it's taken out of context a little bit. And whilst he did have a poor game, and this is the thing, you're absolutely right that he's had so many good games. I think we've become complacent, and with that, when he does have a bad game, it's so easy for people to jump onto him and criticise him for that. But he has earned the right. He has earned the right to do so. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We know that Rashford isn't playing his best football at the moment, but he will come good again. Every player goes through this, strikers in particular, and he has had injuries, and we are, relatively reliant upon them both. But this is Liverpool that we played. This isn't someone else that we really try. Last year we were talking about the fact that we couldn't break down lesser teams. That's not a problem now. And I see that as a very good thing. I see the fact that we can break down those teams and get the majority of our points from those teams as a good thing. And, there will be games where we come up against the bigger teams and we will get a result. What will the narrative be then?
Yeah, it's good points. I mean, Helly's echoing what you say, Mark, at the end, saying if we beat all the smaller teams and draw against the top, we'll still be up there. Man United's biggest problem over the last 7 years is the fact that we've actually got a good record against the biggest sides. Your bread and butter is the smaller teams. Think about it. If there's a top six, right, 10 of your games in the season, home and away, are going to be against the bigger teams. What does Fergie always say? Win your home games against big sides and draw the away games, or don't lose. That's why he went to Anfield and set up like that. That's why he went to Arsenal and always played on the counter. Arsenal played the free-flowing football. United played on the counter. People have short memories. You don't have small minds. Sorry, guys. You got small. Some people have small minds, but you've got people who've got small memories because the problem is that they expect us to go out and play everyone off the park. We're just not at that level yet. And even if we do get the players, we're still not going to go to Manchester City and go and outplay a Pep Guardiola team at his own game. And the thing is as well with Bruno Fernandes, and let's be honest, he's a victim of his own success. He's been so good. A lot of players, they come in and they absolutely kill it, whichever league they go to. Then the second season, people know how to play against them. Bruno's still got 11 goals and 5 assists, I believe, or 7 assists. So he's still contributed 18 of our goals. So the fact that he's done that, considering teams now have a plan for him, they know how to play against him. They've got, tactics in place to contain Bruno Fernandes. And he still put out those numbers. That is absolutely outstanding. I just think people need to relax. This is Liverpool. We weren't playing Sheffield United. If we go and do this tomorrow against Fulham, then I'd expect people to be upset, and I can understand it. We were playing Liverpool. Yes, they were there for the taking. I mean, Joe, another big issue is with this new generation is that because Ronaldo and Messi have scored so many goals at a superhuman level, now everyone expects you. If someone's got 20 goals in the season, people say, oh, well, Ronaldo got 60. So this is a problem. So you actually look at Didier Drogba. How many times did he get more than 20 goals in a season? Maybe one or two times, but he scored big goals. You remember all the big goals in the finals he scored. And that's the problem, Joe, isn't it? That fans expect people to put up superhuman numbers, and actually the level is below what Ronaldo and Messi have done for over a decade.
Yeah, Ronaldo and Messi are almost on their own level, aren't they? So to compare to them for a start, it's just a non-starter, to be honest. I just think, I mean, I remember, and it's not that long ago, it can't be that long ago because my memory's rubbish, but I remember when 20 goals a season for a striker was really good. And let's be honest, we're talking about Bruno Fernandes, who was not playing as a striker. Granted, some games he may have played as a false 9 in some formations. He's been higher up the pitch. This is a number 10 Haider, and you know the numbers that he's churning out are exactly the numbers that he should be churning. You want your number 10 to have, obviously, assists are their bread and butter, but obviously if the goals can be, I always think if the goals can be around the assists, that is absolutely incredible, to be honest. I think that's brilliant. And I think, you even look at De Bruyne now. I think De Bruyne, who I think he got his 100th assist in the Premier League, didn't he, after his assist in the previous game. But he hasn't scored from open play this season, I don't think, for Manchester City. And yet nobody seems to talk about that. I know he's got goals because he takes the penalties, and that's fair enough. I'm not downplaying them because I give Bruno credit for taking penalties, so I have to do the same for De Bruyne. But, Bruno is on course, he's on track. The guy's just won as well 4 Player of the Month awards, let's not forget, in 2020. That's the first time anyone's ever done that. Yeah. I mean, and the other thing I will say as well, Haider, I don't want to lead us on to another topic, but I will say this. If you want to see a better Bruno, you want to see him go on to the next level, you need to surround him with better players as well, Haider. You know what I mean? United have to get this recruitment right now. I mean, we said this last summer, but we're going into this summer and we're saying the same thing. Get the recruitment right, because you put better players around Bruno Fernandes and he will excel even more. I mean, you can say he was poor against Liverpool at times, Haider, but look at where he's having to come and receive the ball. Look at the 2 midfielders who were playing behind him. Both of them, you would say distribution and ball retention is not their strongest suit. And then he's looking out to the right wing. He's got a player that's not played there before in this team on the right wing. And whoever he plays on the right wing at the moment, Solskjaer, it's not the perfect option for Bruno to pass to. So I think give him a right winger to bounce off, combine with, and give him at least one better ball player in midfield. And I think you'll see an even better Bruno. But when he's struggling, that's when he needs these better players in the team to help him out a little bit. And I think we've seen that with Pogba. I think, like I said to you, I've seen a bit of a decline in Bruno's fitness and his form since Wolves, but I think that's coincided with Paul Pogba playing better. And obviously Paul Pogba has done the job for United. He's been getting a lot of credit and praise from certain sections of media and fan base, and people have forgot about Bruno. But the moment Paul Pogba has one poor, well, not a poor game, he didn't have a poor game at all, to be fair, but the one time he plays in a game where he's not as influential, everybody defaults and goes back to looking at Bruno, and it's just unfair, I think.
It's a typical fan base thing to Rashford's better than Martial, Bruno's better than Pogba. I hate Bruno because I like Pogba. Grow up. Like, get out your mum's basement, go and get a job. Seriously, it's childish. It's absolutely childish. But problem is that our fan base is littered with it, and we're in the social media age where I can be sitting after a game looking at it, and I actually get annoyed. Sometimes that's why I've turned my notifications off now, guys, because sometimes I wake up in the morning and it's a bit of a habit. First thing I do, I have a coffee. I'll just see what's going on Twitter. Oh my God, there's about 50 awful tweets, and that's it. That's me done for the rest of the day. But look, that's just the nature of society, and that's the nature of football and social media nowadays. I mean, the Green Devil's got a great comment here saying it's media pressure designed to make us fall off and make it worse for us when we do fall off. Knock-on effect being awful for us long term, not the players' confidence, etc. We definitely don't need to add to it. Exactly. The fans lap it up. That's the problem. The fans bring up the hysteria. We all know that Fabrizio Romano has made a career out of putting Manchester United's name and everything. Guys, open your eyes. He's a tap-in merchant. He's got connections. He's very good at his job, but he uses Manchester United's name. There's been several examples over the past 6 months where he's used United's name wrongly. We remember when Pogba went away to France, and then there were those comments, and he did it in 2 separate tweets, and he put ... so it looked like, and he basically essentially doctored what Pogba said. These things happen.
He said that himself anyway, hasn't he?
Yeah, he said it himself.
The reason why he puts in United's name is because it creates clicks. It creates everything that he needs.
Listen, he's the most well-known. He's the most well-known journalist in the world. He's absolutely killing it. Frank says here, I like it in my mum's basement. I feel safe.
I actually being Frank is one of my best friends, to be fair. I know him, Haider, so yeah.
Oh, genuinely, are you joking?
Genuinely. I know. I lived with him
in his mum's
for years, so I know him really well. He probably does spend a lot of time in his mum's basement. You wouldn't want to know what he's doing down there either. I don't think.
We won't ask anymore.
Nice to see you here, Frank.
But
make sure you smash the sub button if you haven't already.
Like you said there, Haider, though, it happens all the time. You just look at what Christian Falk said today in relation to David Alaba. Look, that one, everybody knows that he's gone to Madrid. When even Fabrizio Romano said it, and then suddenly there's it's not technically a done deal, but the one team that they mentioned that's interested still in him that isn't the front runner is Manchester United. The reason for it is because they probably want more money. That's probably what it is. Look, and we see this all the time with the likes of Fabrizio Romano. It's no coincidence that when he reports something and you get all these fans asking for news for their team, that the one team he actually responds to is Manchester United.
Yeah, it's so obvious what he's doing. As Heli said, the fact you say Fab, everyone in the world, in the footballing world, knows who that is. It's crazy. Look, kudos to the guy. He's made a career out of it. He seems like a really lovely guy as well. Like, obviously I don't know him. I've tried to get him on the podcast, but he charges. Gone
are the days when it was just an ice lolly. Hey?
He came from Demarzio, was it?
Didn't we see something similar with Demarzio? I think Demarzio did this with United as well.
Didn't he?
He worked for Demarzio, yeah.
Yeah, but Demarzio went through a stage where he used United a lot. I think around about the Lukaku Morata time, then I think ever since then, to be fair, I've lost a bit of credibility with Demarzio, and I do feel Fabrizio won't probably drop off that much because the hype's too big now, but actually I think people are starting to open their eyes a bit more.
Absolutely. Guys, I'm going to just move on But before we do, Ciaran, I'll bring you in with Lokesh's comment. I thought it was quite a good comment. Actually, I think you're pretty spot on. You're saying here, probably beating a dead horse. No, I think you're spot on here. But ultimately, comes down to the system that United play in needs just one player to change things a bit. Problem is it's not a problem because, I've said it a lot of the times, Ciaran, that 4-2-3-1 isn't a problem. Like people say, we need to go 4-3-3. We don't. Because, look, whether it's 4-2-3-3, 4-2-3-1, whether it's 4-3-3, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. If you don't have the components for each system, then you're going to come to the same problems. United don't have a defensive midfielder. They don't have someone who can play. Pogba can play a bit deeper, but Ollie likes playing further forward. That's a very crucial area in the midfield. I'm not saying anything against McTominay and Fred. I think they work very hard. The problem is that when you do critique them, people get so offended. Just relax. Like all we're saying is you saw the deficiencies in that first 30 minutes. Thiago made absolute mincemeat of both of them. They couldn't get near him. They just couldn't touch him. They were chasing shadows. Now they've got their place in the squad. You need to find a way, and that will be only through recruitment, but you need to find a way to play one of them with a defensive midfielder. That's the way it's going to work. Both are good players. I'm not saying they're bad players, but the fact that you can only play them together is a serious problem. I tweeted out yesterday that the fact you're playing both of them for one role is a bit of a problem. So Bruno is getting frustrated. Now, Bruno had a bad performance, so he deserves to criticize. His ball retention was shocking. He just looked off the pace. His decision-making is frustrating at times. Marcus, similar. I thought he'd gone back a couple of years, where his decision-making was really poor and he almost like a headless chicken. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if what's behind them in terms of midfield, which is meant to be playing, progressive passes, playing through the lines, if they can't do that and put him in dangerous areas, then his performance levels won't get better.
Yeah, I completely agree. At the end of the day, we have Fred and McTominay, who, again, they have a place in the squad because you need depth within your squad. You look at all the other teams, you look at City, you look at Liverpool in certain areas anyway, they have good players that they can go to. The problem is, like you said, we have both of them playing in a position that we need one player playing in, and realistically, neither one of them can do it by themselves, and that's the biggest problem. United need to be able to bring in a defensive midfielder, a proper defensive midfielder. I mention it all the time when people talk about it. I always say you need a kind of Michael Essien type defensive midfielder that can both play the passes through, is an unbelievable defender, but also has kind of the agility and has the energy to do it for the whole game. It's difficult to find that, but ideally that's the style of player you look for, because it then means you don't actually have to play Fred and McTominay. And if you really wanted to, attack someone, you could actually play Pogba, Bruno and Van de Beek at the same time, because you have that kind of reassurance. Why it's no coincidence that we tend to play better when A, Matic is playing and B, Matic is healthy, because we need that cover. And the problem is with Fred and McTominay, they just don't do the things that you need your midfielders to do when you're being put under pressure. When they have time on the ball, yeah, they can pick passes and they can play it through. The problem is, and we all know it, is when a team presses United high and they focus on Fred and McTominay, we struggle. And that's why when that happens, you see Maguire have to play it out, because he actually is calm on the ball. But Fred and McTominay, I just don't think that they do enough. And until that position is fixed, you're not going to get to the next level. And that's the issue. Even if we went into the summer and signed Sancho, it still doesn't actually fix the biggest problem in our team. While the right mid, or when the right winger is a big problem, that defensive midfielder is critical. And we just don't have it. And the problem is, and it's kind of what United have done, is they leave these glaring holes for years and years and years, and they don't actually go and fix them. How long have we had this issue with a right winger?
Do you not remember, though, the midfield problem under Fergie? I remember for years, I was like, there was Stephen Defoe that went to Burnley. We linked with him, and we want Stephen Defoe. We want Wesley Sneijder. We wanted
Gaitan.
Gaitan's a winger, but we wanted what's his face? João Moutinho, who's now obviously at Wolves. For years and years, we want Van der Vaart was a player that we should have bought.
Strootman was another one.
Look, we were always linked to those. The one thing that that Ferguson had in his teams, though, is he had that midfielder that would be able to protect his defense. So whether he had Michael Carrick playing in that role, whether he had Darren Fletcher playing in that role, when it was actually really good when he had Roy Keane in that position. But Ferguson's biggest problem, what he was looking for, was actually the Bruno Fernandes type player. Now we have the Bruno Fernandes type player, and we don't have the cover.
We don't have the Paul Scholes of the Carrick.
Yeah, and that's what we need. It's people. Look, if you're realistic, and we said this at the start of the podcast, United are probably 4 players away from winning the title. Personally, for me, it's an out-and-out goal scorer, a right winger, a defensive midfielder, and a centre back. For me, if you get starters in every single one of those positions, it doesn't even have to be in 1 year. Over the next 2 to 3 years, because players that are in our team are still really young. So if you do that, so let's say it takes 3 years and 1 year you buy 2 of them and the other 2 years you buy 1, you actually have a squad there that's pretty complete that can actually challenge. The problem is you look at the likes of City and they'll do that in 1 season and they'll improve, and then that gap gets a little bit bigger. Especially now, you're looking at teams are going to see that this Premier League has actually, where there's a lot of teams that are joined together at the top. My worry is that next summer, City are like, we can make a big advancement here above those teams and bring in 2 to 3 very big players, and they can increase that gap. And that's my biggest issue. Why I think United, they have to focus in on at least one of those players. You either have to get your striker that's going to score a lot of goals, your right winger, which, look, we all know Jadon Sancho's who United want, or you get your centre-back or defensive midfielder. I think it's absolutely critical if United actually want to challenge over the next 2 to 3 seasons that they need to do that.
Well, it's a great point here from Green Devil. Actually, DM for defensive purposes didn't have to be so good when you had Rio and Vidic behind you. It's a great point there, and that's actually true, because I don't think Carrick was the most ferocious in the tackle, and that was actually part of the problem. I remember fans were going in on Carrick because he wasn't Roy Keane. Nobody's Roy Keane. Roy Keane is
number 16.
Yeah, but that's why. This is what happens with Pogba. He's not Roy Keane. Like, I would love a Roy Keane, but we're not going to find. There is no Roy Keane in world football. And there never will be a Roy Keane. And that's why Roy Keane was absolutely just priceless. Absolutely priceless. We're going to move on, guys. Mark, let's talk about Lindelof, because, well, we'll mention Shaw as well, but we praised Shaw last week. Shaw was man of the match for me. He was fantastic. He seems to have got that extra yard of pace again. He was overlapping, loose in possession, but I think everyone was loose in possession. If you actually look at the possession, giveaways, a lot of people gave the ball away in the team. And Fred and McTominay between them lost the ball 20 times, 12 for Fred, which is absolutely, in that double pivot, is absolutely shocking. Ciaran looks like he's going to cry.
That's not what you want from your double
pivot.
I mean,
I spoke about it on the masterclass, and that was something. Actually, Fred was way more wasteful than McTominay. And Fred was, I think McTominay's problem was Fred was lunging in. McTominay's problem was that he was pretty much holding Fred's hand, which is what he does when we play the diamond as well. But as Haider said here, Shaw neutralized. So Shaw was fantastic, really was. But I want to talk about Lindelof, because as usual, before kickoff, there's the complaints, and I tweeted about it. Even Ciaran was a little bit.
To be honest, that was because my fantasy team. That was the only reason why.
Fair enough. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
Good save.
Good save. But I tweeted, why is everyone getting so upset? I mean, look, Eric Bailly is a player who's been absolutely fantastic, but we were going to play a low block, which we did. We weren't playing a high line. What Lindelof does better than Bailly is that he's better at playing it quickly to the channels. That's just a fact. He's a better ball player than Bailly. Everyone goes, Bailly's incredible on the ball. Lindelof's very underrated on the ball. The fact that Lindelof isn't very good in the air, people negate all of his other good qualities. Do you remember that absolutely fantastic block he did? And we nearly went up the other end and scored the goal. So I thought he was fantastic. And I think what we need to perhaps do as fans, I'm guilty of this as well, actually. I guess sometimes maybe not recently, but I used to get very angry at looking at the team sheet. Oh, why is he playing? Why is he not playing? Every time I do that, we end up doing all right. We just need to relax a little bit and just let the boys play. And then after the game, we can say, look, this was right, this was wrong. Lindelof still has a place in the squad, and I see a lot of people not giving him praise. He deserves a lot of praise, I think.
Yeah, I agree. He was fantastic on Sunday. I mean, I was even one of those, to be honest with you, Haider, and I think that I've got to learn to do that as well. I saw the team sheet and I thought, after the last few weeks of Bai doing so well, perhaps it means that we can play further forward. And I guess as well, you look at it negatively because you know that if those two are playing, then you're going to sit back a bit more. But that was the best way to approach it, wasn't it? And he had a terrific game, and he is our best ball playing centre back, and he was phenomenal. It was really good to see, and I think that ultimately we do have to take a step back. We have to know that Ollie does know what he's doing. He's proved us wrong many times. There was lots of people on his back about tactics and who you're starting and your best 11, but he seems to sort of get it right week in, week out. And that's something we all have to remember too. As I said, I did exactly the same. I thought, Christ, why is Bailly not starting? But um, that's why. And he did brilliant. I thought, as you said, I know we don't want to talk about him too much because we spoke about him last week, but Shaw was brilliant. We wrote him off. I saw a couple of tweets the other day. It's taken Shaw 7 years in order to get to Ciaran saying this. I know, I'm sorry, mate. It's taken 7 years for Shaw to get this to get to this stage, but he went for a double leg break. He needed that competition. It's funny because you saw Mane switch to the other side, and they still couldn't get past him. He was absolutely brilliant. But I think, yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head that sometimes when these team sheets come out, we should try not to jump on it so quick. It's not going to please everybody. And including myself was proved very wrong. Lindelof was smashing. And it was good to see.
You're on mute, Joe. At least once every episode.
It wouldn't be a show without me being on mute, would it, mate? But now, Ciaran, look, I hate when Ciaran gives me that look. It's like a disappointed parent look. I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. But no, look, I to be honest with you, I didn't have many thoughts on it, to be honest. I thought I wasn't bothered either way. The only thing I would say, looking in hindsight at the game, the only thing I will say, even though Lindelof had a very good game, I looked at, I think they did it on Monday Night Football last night, where they looked at the average positions of the two centre-backs for both teams, and obviously ours were a lot deeper in the game than Liverpool's. And I do think that if we had Bailly, I think it might have just helped us to push up the field a couple of more yards, just because obviously with Bailly...
See, that's something I completely disagree with.
Okay, let me just finish, and then I'll obviously come back at me. But I think obviously with Bailly, then, if the balls go over the top, he trusted his pace more, if you know what I mean. But I think, to be fair, the danger wasn't really as the game panned out, the danger wasn't really in behind because we were so deep that front three is so poor at the moment. Then obviously they weren't threatening us in the way that we were. But I think that's the only thing I can say. If I had played, we'd have maybe gone a bit further forward. But like you say, Lindelof I think he reads the game better as well, by the way. I think he has got experience of playing in these games at Anfield as well. I think in the game last year at Anfield, I think Lindelof played pretty well in that one as well. So, and that means a lot with a coach like Solskjaer. He does look for players who have got history at playing well against certain teams, and I think that's why he favours them.
Yeah, Ollie's definitely got a little echo there. Ollie's definitely got he's got his favourites. We know that Bruno's one of them, Rashford is one of them, and he does rely on them, and that's probably something as well that could be a negative for Ollie. I think when he's sometimes too loyal to certain players. I mean, something, Ciaran, that I think Lindelof did very well. He was very good. In fact, he was excellent anticipating Liverpool's incisive passes. They love Mane and Salah love to run in behind. They love to make those out-to-in runs. And I actually think Maguire struggled. I thought Maguire was still good, but he was the one that looked worse. I think, as Helly said, we don't see them in practice. We don't know what goes on behind the club. But also, it's something Lakesh says here, and it's absolutely bang on. It's something I actually said on game day when everyone was having an absolute meltdown and having kittens. But, he said, before fans have a go at a certain player, they need to understand how that player is going to be used. It's all about the system. And I think it reflects also when people don't understand why a certain player is playing. How many times has Sir Alex played Park Ji-sung in a big game? How many times? I was watching the other day. Remember I sent you the highlights when United beat Barcelona and probably one of my favorite ever games in the semi-final with that Paul Scholes banger. Park Ji-sung in that short highlight reel. I think you might mention it, Mark. You're like, oh my God, Park is everywhere. Someone did. And he was literally everywhere, in defense, in attack. Sometimes you got to pick players. I'm not saying, because then people are going to say, oh, well, that's why McTominay plays. No, there's still other quality around. But sometimes managers pick players to fit a certain role for a certain game, or they have attributes which are good for that game. Doesn't mean it's not as binary as Bailly's good because he's playing well. Lindelof's a bad defender. No, they're both good players. Bailly probably better suited next to Maguire. But in this sort of game, Lindelof is the right choice.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And it does come down to the types of games. I had this debate with a couple of people on Twitter over the last couple of weeks where they're saying that the best United team is this. It depends, though. It depends who we're up against, what type of defense. You look at the game against Burnley, and I think if you started Lindelof in that game, it's a big issue because he wouldn't be able to deal with kind of how Burnley want to attack you. But you look at Bailly and Maguire, they would. For me, one of the other reasons why I would have liked to see Bailly, and it's not so much to slate Lindelof, it's more of if we think Bailly is going to be one of the long-term options, I want to see him play against one of the top teams because I need to know that he can get through that and that he can perform really well. We know Lindelof is good. The one concern I'll always have for Lindelof this season is going to be his back injury because those come up all the time. And just the rumors that kind of came out, it was like, I know he's aggravated it 3 times this year. And it's one of those that, look, you can't always be forcing players in too early. You need to be able to protect them. And I think again, the way I think teams should be selected, it should be a meritocracy. I said it when the whole thing about Pogba came out with Raiola. If he deserves to play, he should play. It's the same for Bailly. For me, I do want to see Bailly play in one of these big games because I want to see how he fares because, look, he's hard to trust because of his injury record, and it's fair. Lindelof suited that game against Liverpool. That doesn't mean he's going to suit a game against Chelsea or Man City, or basically when it comes up to a very physical striker, you're probably leaning closer to Bailly. But like you said, Haider, I was very disappointed again with Maguire. I think some of the times when he led up possession and you just looked at him and you were like, if Bailly was playing, he would have got to that ball and cleared it very simply. And that's kind of what we're missing.
Ciaran, the problem is, though, is that he won't ever get dropped. Like it's going to be Maguire plus new signing or Maguire plus Bailly or whoever. And
yeah,
actually,
absolutely.
You look at Maguire and Lindelof. I know they were bought to play together by Jose Mourinho, and still, yes, the injuries and yes, hasn't worked out for Bailly, but on paper, that's a beautiful combination.
It is, but I don't think it's a combination that wins you a league. That's the difference.
You look
at Man City, and they've had good centre backs over the last couple of years. Even when Otamendi came in, he was good. You have Laporte, you had Stones now, but you look at now they bring in Ruben Diaz, and it was Laporte, and I can't remember who was playing with Laporte, if it was Stones or there was somebody else.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Now you see Ruben Diaz come in, who's been unbelievable for them, and then suddenly he's actually increased the level of Stones. So there's no reason to think that another centre back that comes in, we'll throw a name out there if it's Pau Torres because he's the one that's been linked most, that if in training that he actually suits more with Bailly or Lindelof and increases how well they play, well then I would want my manager to drop a defender that has been good and has played most games. Like Laporte, when he's been fit other than this season, has played pretty much every single game for City. I want my manager that if he's brought in a centre-back and then he looks at it and he sees Lindelof performs better with this new centre-back, I want to see Lindelof and this centre-back play. I don't care if you bought Maguire for 80 million and he's your captain. You have to do what's best for the team. So I think it is a tricky one because, like you said, combinations work. When you didn't have Vidic and Rio together and you put somebody else in, they struggled. And that's where we saw the differences. City, I think, have gotten lucky that they brought in Ruben Diaz, and it's just working really well with John Stones. Put in another centre back there instead of Stones, and is the combination as good? We don't know, because they found a combination that fits. And you look at that City back line, that's a back line that can win the Premier League. When I look at United's back line, I don't see it, because the reason why we talk so much about our midfield is because really the defence hasn't been to the level where you can actually trust them to be the main kind of defense of the team, that you need that extra midfielder. Some of the big teams, you look at City, when they don't have Fernandinho, you're not seeing kind of Gundogan go back and be the defensive midfielder. And Fernandinho doesn't play every single game now, because they trust their defense that they can actually do a job. And I don't think that we're at that level yet. But like you said, Lindelof's brilliant for Sweden. There's no and he plays well for us. But I just think we haven't got kind of this, not even the system, but the pairing.
It's a combination, yeah.
Yeah, to get to that level that we actually want to get to. And it takes time. It's probably the hardest pairing to find in a team.
I mean, you make some fantastic points about Fernandinho, actually. That why is City leaking less goals? They're struggling to score, but they're leaking less goals. I mean, they just went and pumped past 4, didn't they? So they're not really struggling. Wait till they get. If Aguero starts firing, guys, and I don't want to be negative, but they'll walk it. They'll absolutely walk it.
We're screwed if that happens.
I think he's finished personally in terms of, I don't think he'll ever get to that level. Too many injuries, but looking at Fernandinho, that is why he stepped into midfield again, because he was the best defensive midfielder. I think now currently in the Premier League, I know he's not playing there right now, but Fabinho is just an incredible all-round footballer. Plays centre back at high level, right back. He used to play at Monaco. He's a great penalty taker. He's just absolute top class. I love Matic, but that's who United should have gone for. We scouted him for years. We were first choice for him, but obviously Mourinho wanted Uncle Matic, and I love Matic, but the long-term thinking of it is just crazy, because Fabinho is 26 now. At the time he was 24. Matic is 32, 33. You know, it's just short-termism. But Ndidi scored, guys, by the way, as well. I just saw the goal. Great goal. Apparently, actually, James Jackson told me this yesterday, that he was listening to Talk Sport, and I don't know if this is true. It might not be true, but shout out to James. But he said to me that if Lampard loses this, he's going to get sacked. That's what was said. And they've spoken to... Come on, Chelsea. But then also if Leicester lose as well, that's good for United. And then Ndidi obviously scored, fantastic player. A lot of love for him in the comments. He'd still be brilliant. I'm not sure about the 80 million for him and his passing range, but at this point, I'd take anyone to just come in and just play that role. So Wilfred Ndidi is a fantastic player. Guys, we're going to finish off a couple of minutes each. Just want to know your views quickly on Fulham, because we are nearly out of time. Mark, I'll come to you. Should Ollie be looking to rest Bruno, Rashford, and Maguire, some of the key players, or should he go full strength and then look to rest them on the weekend?
Well, I think Fulham have had a good run of games. They only just lost against Chelsea. They drew against, I can't remember the team, sorry, at various weeks before that. So I think they're going to be difficult to break down. But what I do think is we've got the squad, almost anyway, but we've got the squad to be able to rotate a little bit. I do think Bruno, I mean, he came out today, didn't he? And he said that Bruno would say no if he needed resting. But I guess any player's going to say that. And it's going to be very difficult to tell him. But I think it would be a good opportunity for him to be rested for sure. He needs it. I do think he needs it. You know, he had one game out a few weeks ago, and I don't think that was enough. It's great that he's a machine. It's great that he can recharge quickly, as Ollie has said. But as I said, play Pogba, Van der Beek, my man. It's a good opportunity for him. So Rashford as well. I mean, we're not really sure what's going on there, and I know obviously he had the shoulder problem. Has he fully recovered? Probably not. We've been quite reliant on him, really. And I think, Greenwood, I mean, we haven't really seen him start yet and seen him sort of hit any run of form whatsoever. But I think those players can do it. I think those players can do it. On paper, they should be absolutely fine. And they will have a point to prove too. Sometimes being able to rotate and start the players that, are on the fringe, it will be a good opportunity for them to really say, play me next time. So that's what I think you should do.
Good point. Jamie's got here about Fulham. Drew at Spurs, Joe. Drew at home to Liverpool. Unlucky against Chelsea, which they were actually the last game. And be tough, but we will win 3-1. Ellie, I didn't think it was possible for you to hate anyone, Ellie. You're too nice, but hate for them even more than Burnley. Dangerous team. They're playing with 10 men for the whole second half against Chelsea. Joe, Scott Parker's done a fantastic job there. I thought he was going to lose his job. And they play great football. They keep hold of the ball really well. They're good in possession. I watched them the other day. They are dangerous on the counter, definitely. They've got some players that can hurt you. Lookman especially is fantastic. What I will say is Ollie has to rotate the squad. For me, actually, I don't think he should rest any of the big players for this game. I think we should rest them on the weekend. I don't care about the FA Cup. I'll be honest with you. People say we need to win a trophy. Look, we lost out on the EFL Cup, and that's the one I thought, right, we're at the semis, but now we're in the title race. No one thought we'd be here at this stage of the season. So the Premier League, we're playing the team who are 19th, then we're playing Sheffield United, who are basement boys after that. Should Ollie be playing full strength and then resting on the weekend?
No, I'm with you, Haider. I think that point at Liverpool looks even better if you beat Fulham. I think that point at Liverpool, you always look at games in sort of pairs, and I think I was looking before Liverpool game, Liverpool away, Fulham away, two potentially tricky games for different reasons, but I always thought 4 points from that would be pretty good, to be fair. So actually, I'm a little bit like you, although I do think, and I kind of contradicted myself, because I do think Bruno and Rashford look like they need that break. I would be tempted to try and get them in from the start tomorrow and get that job done. But the other thing as well is that obviously tomorrow is the last opportunity for people to get suspensions for 5 yellows. So obviously, if Bruno gets a yellow tomorrow, or Maguire, or I think Shaw's the other player that I think we've got on a yellow. If any of them get a yellow, that the decision will be out of Ollie's hands anyway for Sheffield United in a couple of weeks' time in the league. So, but I think this is one that you need to go and win it. So, look, the ideal situation for United is that they'll start full strength and they could be 3-0 up within an hour. That would be brilliant. There's no indication to say that'll be the case because we're not scoring lots of goals at the moment. But if we could do that, that'd be great. And then you get these players off. But I think the league now, with our position and the way that we've been playing in the league and the way our squad is, I think that's become our bread and butter. So, yeah, you go out for the win tomorrow. And if you have to sacrifice the cup next weekend, then so be it. It'll be a shame because it's Liverpool and you never want to lose to them. But I think Liverpool will make changes for that game as well against us at Old Trafford. So I think you'll see both teams rotating in that one. So it's not a problem. But yeah, I would like us to get this job done against Fulham one way or another. I think the ideal situation for United in this game is actually not play Bruno. He comes on with a quarter of an hour to go. He scores a penalty in the last minute of the game, whips his shirt off, gets a yellow card. He's won us the game, and also it means he gets a rest against Sheffield United, and it takes the decision out of Ollie's hands. Because Ollie would want to play Bruno every game. You know, there's no doubt about it. He'd want to play him, and why wouldn't you? You know, he's a talisman. He's terrific, and he holds the key in so many elements of the game. But going back to Fulham as well, just to touch on them quickly, they have been a lot better this year. I've been impressed with them against the bigger sides. Haider, Scott Parker's got them working really well. But the key for them this year, I think, in terms of the difference between them this time and the last time in the Premier League has been their recruitment. You know, they've definitely recruited a lot more sensibly this time. I think last time they came in the Premier League, they were one of the biggest spenders, spent over £100 million, didn't they? Spent a lot of money.
Mess.
Yeah, wasted money. Although some of them are there. I think Anguissa was part of that spending, and obviously he's been fantastic this season for them. And like someone said in the comments, definitely one to watch. But Lookman coming in's been a shrewd move. The guy Robinson, who was actually suspended for our game tomorrow, he's done really well at fullback as well. He looks a bit of a talent. He was linked with AC Milan, so I think that's why they've improved. And credit to them, they've been good. And like I say, especially against the bigger sides, which is what worries me because it's been the bigger sides in which I think that their best performances will be this season.
Yeah, fantastic points there. I definitely agree with Anguissa from Lokesh, and you obviously saying in the comments, player to watch out. Yeah, he looks fantastic. Ciaran, just to quickly finish, Ollie does need to learn, I think, or be a bit harder than Bruno, because obviously Bruno wants to play every game. That's his mentality. But he does need to sometimes say, look, he needs to be a bit stronger, I think, in my opinion, say, Bruno, you're not playing this game. And also have the confidence in the fringe players to bring in, because he spent money on Van der Beek. And Van der Beek can play the number 10 role. Give him an opportunity. This is the perfect time to give him an opportunity, either this game or the next game. So I don't think that against Fulham, I mean, we saw Van der Beek against West Ham, but no one played well that first half. That was terrible. I mean, we all thought Ollie could have got sacked after the game. That's how bad it was. So, when you're looking at Van der Beek, he's got to give him a bit of confidence, say, look, this is a game I'm going to play you, and trust him and allow him to play, because if you're not going to play him on this game or even Sheffield United next week or even Liverpool on the weekend, if Van der Beek doesn't play at least one of those games, then I'm going to start being a bit concerned and be thinking, why do we spend 40 million on a player like that when that money could have gone towards a defensive midfielder or something like that? Not that I don't want Van der Beek. He's fantastic. He's a fantastic talent. But if you're going to play him at number 10.
Yeah, it's definitely a valid point. I completely agree with what you and Joe said. I've been saying that all day, even since the game at the weekend. I'd stick with the strongest 11 against Fulham, and then I have no problem in actually using kind of the bench and kind of players that don't get to play that often against Liverpool. And I don't care if we would lose. If we lost 3 or 4-0 to Liverpool but beat Fulham 1-0, that's a better result for me, because right now I think we need to focus on the league, because at the end of the day, we're seeing, even tonight with Chelsea not playing that well, we need to try and get up as many points as possible. And personally, I just think the Premier League is just more important than the FA Cup. Like, you look at it, and would you prefer to be in a kind of a challenge for the title, or would you prefer to be in an FA Cup semi-final or final? For me, I don't get that excited over the FA Cup anymore. It's been one of those that I don't care. Honestly, if you're looking for a game to even throw Diallo in for a couple of minutes, I'd like to see him against Liverpool at the weekend. He'll get more space as well. Against Fulham, it is right what Joe said in terms of Bruno maybe coming on for the last half hour, but I think the problem is I don't think Ollie trusts other players to play, because every single time he's put Bruno on the bench, he's had to bring him on. It's the same with Rashford. There's been so many games where he doesn't want to have to bring these players on, but the players that play instead don't perform to that level, and they haven't changed the game to where we're winning. And that's the biggest issue. Like, I say Ollie would love to be able to bench Bruno for a game and to let him properly rest. If we were winning 1-0, 2-0, he wouldn't bring Bruno on. The problem is that that's not happening enough. Like, I think the only time that he didn't bring him on was against Watford in the FA Cup. That's really it. Every other time he's put Bruno on the bench since lockdown last year, that he's actually had to bring him on at halftime or at 60 minutes, because we need the points. And at the end of the day, it's, if we're going to say that we're going to fight for the title, you focus on the Premier League. It's the same thing. Even though we're playing against Real Sociedad in the Europa League, I'd still play a bench team in that as well, because I don't care about any other competition. The only thing I want to see is United challenge in the league. So if that means you rest your big players in all the cup games, so be it. I don't care if we don't win them. Like, I've seen us win enough of those, and it doesn't bother me that we haven't won the FA Cup since Van Gaal's year. It really doesn't bother me at all. What does get on my nerves is the fact that we haven't competed in the league since Ferguson left. And that's what I want to see this team do. If we just compete, don't win any cups, and we're there towards the end, for me, it's a successful season. So I agree with you, Haider, and you, Joe, that put your strongest team against Fulham and then play anybody who doesn't play regularly against Liverpool at the weekend. Because then, especially for your match of Van der Beek, if he plays accent against Liverpool, who could start their full team, well, then I think that would make a bigger impression than him playing a really good game against Fulham, because then people will say, but it's Fulham. If he can do that against a team like Liverpool, I think that's a great match to actually put him in and see what he can do.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. I couldn't agree more. Guys, we've got to wrap up now. Thank you very much for listening. If this is the first time you're here, please smash the like button and the subscribe button as well. You can see us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts as well. Give us a follow on Twitter. Mark, Ciaran, and Joe, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you all for your comments tonight, and we'll see you next time.